Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about a plant that I also grow in the early spring. This is around the time when I plant it outdoors, around early to mid-March, and I'm talking about the turnip. The turnip I grow is, I believe it's called the purple top turnip. It's not an outrageously exotic variety. I think this is probably the type that you might commonly find in grocery stores and various markets. It's just kind of a creamy white turnip with like a purple splotch on the top. It's a fairly tasty variety, provided of course you like turnips, and it's again dependable, pretty reliable, it grows pretty well. What I commonly like to do with the purple top turnip is I companion plant that with the green arrow pea that I also grow in the garden. Of course, the pea helps provide the nitrogen, and then the turnip helps to decompact the soil with its roots and as it grows and such like that, and it also uses that nitrogen for its own needs as well. That the pea provides. And both of these plants work together to help cover the ground, sprout up, and provide a bit of a canopy over top of the soil. It can also kind of, in a way, be used as a cover crop as well, and turnips can be used in certain cover crop mixes for some of those purposes, also maybe for forage purposes, for feeding livestock and such like that, but it's just a very useful, dependable crop. Usually these roots are ready to harvest around late June, early July or so, at least in this zone 6A climate. So I harvest them, clean them up a little bit, and then I cube them up and put them in jars, and I freeze them for over the winter. And then over the winter I can use them in soup, stews, and a number of other dishes. They provide a pretty good source of vitamin C. I also have gotten into lacto-fermenting them as well. I believe I did a video on that like a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now. The only trick I've found with the purple top turnip is being able to successfully overwinter it so that I can collect the seeds from it the next year. The turnip, of course, is a biennial plant, and it needs to be able to survive the winter if it is to produce seeds that next year. So a couple of years ago I did an experiment on overwintering turnips and rutabagas, and it was interesting because actually, even just providing a little bit of mulch on top of the turnip roots and keeping them from blowing away helped provide a little bit of additional cover. Even if there was not snow on the ground to help provide an insulative layer, that layer of grass or leaves or whatever that I had secured in place to keep it from blowing away on top of the turnips, helped to kind of provide that layer. Of course, I didn't pack it too tight and high or anything like that, otherwise you don't want to, shade out the greens or anything like that. You want to have those tops exposed to the fresh air and such. But that actually seemed to work, and I was able to get some viable seeds from that next spring. The year after that I had two kind of experimental plots, one where I just grew turnips outside. I didn't try to protect them or cover them from the snow or anything like that. And then I also had some turnips that I grew in the cold frames, and I figured I'd try to overwinter those turnips in the cold frames as well and see how that went. Well, the cold frames ended up drying out, and so I had a 100% casualty rate in there. You also have to watch out for voles. They can find their way into cold frames and stuff through the bottom, to watch out for that as well. But the main issue that I had was that I guess dehydration. The plants dried up, they couldn't get enough moisture, and so they were not able to survive. Now, the others that I grew out in the garden that were not protected from the elements, some of them sustained a little bit of vole nibbling and stuff on the outside of the roots, and those seem to be largely the ones that died. But then there are others that have been able to survive, and those are greening up now that it's spring and warming up and such, and sending up some new leaves. So hopefully I'll be able to harvest some seeds from that as well. Also, I noticed from some of the plants I grew last year, I had planted in the ground as seeds. Some of those, even though turnips are supposed to be a biennial plant, some of those plants ended up acting like annuals, where they would, every now and then, a few of them would bolt in midsummer, and then they'd flower and set seed. So I also harvested some seeds from those as well. So generally how I like to plant a turnip, I used to make a furrow in the ground and would just sprinkle the seeds in. But I found that this could be fairly inaccurate. The plants would come up all kind of bunched up, and I'd have very excellent germination rates, so it really kind of made it not best practice, not very efficient to get the most out of my seeds. Even though it's a lot more time consuming and a lot more labor intensive, just kind of poking a hole every inch or so, inch and a half, 2 inches, depending on how large you want the turnips to be, in the soil in rows, and just putting one seed in there, and just really, for me, seems to be the best way to do it, even though it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. However, because they germinate so reliably well, and they can grow quite large even from just a tiny seed, it really makes it a lot more worth it in the end. You just have to keep reminding yourself that as you're out there planting those seeds. As I found last season, the ones that I planted individually in rows grew a lot bigger, they grew a lot better, a lot more full. The leaves were much darker green, and the ones that were grown closer together produced, many of them produced very small roots. Some of them didn't even bulb out, and a lot of the leaves ended up being a light green and smaller plants, and the whole patch just ended up kind of looking a little anemic. So, and that was when I was even trying to weed out the ones that were smaller and stuff like that. Maybe I just didn't weed them aggressively, or thin them out is the term that we usually use. Maybe I just didn't thin them out aggressively enough. And just to be able to avoid all that, I'm a huge proponent of taking the extra time to just go out there and seed it individually. Now, if you have one of those automatic walk behind seeders for your garden, or market garden or whatever, well, that's a lot less labor intensive, and that can be a great way to do this efficiently and not run out of patience, or feel like you're wasting time. I do not have that luxury, so I just do the whole process by hand.